Hi, I'm Ian Lees, and you're listening to Scottish Shindig with Andy Phillip on Radio GH.
The Scottish Shindig, the best in Scottish dance music and song.
Well, hello and a very warm welcome to the Scottish Shindig. It's Andy standing in for you this Sunday, and sit back, relax for the next hour or so and wait for some great music and song. Well, hello and a very warm welcome to the show wherever you're tuned in from. I hope you're doing well and had a great week. And we'll get started straight away. Take your partners for a Gay Gordons from Tom Orr and his album Tomorrow's World. Here we go. A very warm welcome. How are you all doing? Great to see so many of you tuned in from Shetland to Portugal to North Yorkshire to all over the place, and I hope you're all doing very well. That was Tom Orr getting us off to a great start with a Gay Gordons, and we'll follow that up with a Boston two-step, but this time from Sandy Nixon and his Scottish Dance Band from the album Silver Spire. Take your partners for a Boston two-step. Well, a really swinging Boston two-step from Sandy Nixon and his Scottish dance band from the album The Silver Spire, getting us off to a real swing and a real tempo after the Gay Gordons from Tom Orr. Well, we'll slow the tempo down a wee bit and go back in time to quite an old recording from Jimmy Shand and his band. This plays Old Time Classics Volume 2, and it's a lovely medley called Queen Mary Waltz. A lovely step back in time with Jimmy Shand and his band from the album Plays Old Time Classics Volume 2, and that was Queen Mary Waltz, and a very bonny tune it is too. Well, we'll go from the east coast of Scotland over to Ireland now for a selection, including starting with the Blackthorn Stick, but this comes from Wayne Robertson and his band. And if you want to hear Wayne, you don't have to go as far as Ireland, because if you're near to Forres on Wednesday night, Wayne and Robertson is playing at Forres Accordion and Fiddle Club. So here is Wayne with the band with the Blackthorn Stick. Great playing from Wayne Robertson and his band from the album Diversity. That was a medley, starting with the Blackthorn Stick. Well, we'll slow things down a wee bit this time and we'll have a song coming from Valerie Dunbar from her album called Always Argyle, but the song she's going to sing this time is Spinning Wheel.
Merrily, cheerily, noisily whirring, swings the wheel, spins the wheel while the foot's stirring, sprightly and lightly and airily ringing, sounds the sweet voice of a young maiden singing. Mellow the moonlight, his shine is beginning, close by the window, young Eileen is spinning, bent o'er the fire, blind grandmother is sitting, crooning and moaning and drowsily knitting. Eileen, no Cora, I hear someone tapping. 'Tis the ivy, dear mother, upon the glass flapping. Eileen, I surely hear somebody sighing. 'Tis the sound, mother dear, of the autumn winds dying. Merrily, cheerily, noisily whirring, swings the wheel, spins the wheel while the foot's stirring, sprightly and lightly and airily ringing, sounds the sweet voice of a young maiden singing. There's a form at the casement, the form of her true love. He whispers with face bent, I'm waiting for you, love. Get up on the stool, through the lattice step lightly. We'll roam in the grove while the moon's shining brightly. The maid shakes her head, on her lip lays her fingers, steals up from the stool, longs to go and yet lingers. A frightened glance turns on her drowsy grandmother, puts one foot on the stool, spins the wheel with the other. Slower and slower and slower the wheel swings, lower and lower and lower the reel rings. Ere the reel and the wheel stop spinning and moving, while in the grove the young lovers are roving.
Well, a bonny song, Spinning Wheel, and that came from Valerie Dunbar from an album called Always Argyle, and a bonny song it is too. Well, we'll head from Valerie Dunbar over to Liam Stewart and his band, and he's going to give us a track from his album called As Promised, and the track is From Rothesay to Glencoe, and if you are near Dunfermline on Tuesday night you'll hear Liam Stewart there. So from Rothesay to Glencoe, here's Liam and the band. Well, that was Liam Stewart and the band with From Rothsay to Glencoe, and I understand there was some problems with the sound. It was sounding fine here. 1 second, I'm just doing other checks at the moment. It was sounding fine here through the system, but I did check by going onto YouTube and I could hear it was stuttering like, something that stutters badly. We'll carry on anyway with Scary Vor. Scary Vor from their album West Coast Life with a lovely take on the sands of Q8 and hopefully get to the bottom of whatever gremlins are happening with the internet. Sands of Q8, and that was from their album West Coast Life. I can see still having issues. Everything's fine here. I don't know what's happening with the Tinternet. I can suggest if you want to tune in just to www.radiogh.co.uk, the audio should be coming out perfectly on that. I don't know what's happening with YouTube. I don't know what's happening with Facebook. It's out with my control. I'll plough on anyway, and hopefully things will improve. Next up we have Ian Muir and his Scottish dance band from an album An Evening with Friends, and he's going to play us a Viennese swing. And you can hear Ian on Tuesday night at Blair Gowrie Accordion and Fiddle Club. Well, a lovely medley of tunes from Ian Muir and his Scottish dance band from an album An Evening with Friends, and that was a medley for a Viennese swing. And as I said, you can hear Ian and the guys on Tuesday night at Blair Gowrie Accordion and Fiddle Club. Hopefully things are a bit better now. There's been nothing we could adjust here. To let you understand, these shows go out through about 4 different pieces of software that are out with our control. It could be a server somewhere away in the back of beyond in the States or elsewhere that's having a wee glitch that causes that worldwide. Anyway, we'll carry on. Hopefully it will remain a bit more stable. You will be able to tune in to www.radiogh.co.uk and the audio file will be absolutely fine. And if it's not, I'll sit and re-record the whole thing again. Anyway, we're about halfway through the programme and time for something a wee bit different. And this time it's coming from Morgan's Backyard, Odd Anahalis, Ryder Dahl and Soren Bricks. And it's a great live track and a well-known track for American Patrol. Well, I don't know about you, but I could sit and listen to that one all the way through again. That was American Patrol coming from Morgan's Backyard, Odan Alice, Ryder Dahl, and Soren Bricks, and fantastic live broadcast it was too. Well, we're going to head back over to Ireland. This time it's with an Irishman himself, Fintan Stanley, who now lives in Boston, I believe, and you might be aware of his daughter Lisa Stanley, who's a well-established and very accomplished singer. Anyway, over to Fintan Stanley, and he's going to play us an Irish medley. Well, how about that? Some wonderful playing from Fintan Stanley, and that was from an album called Back Again, and that was a medley with some great, well-known tunes in there. Well, a wee treat for Brenda, I think it was, I saw in the comments, who's going to settle to hear Brandon McPhee live. So the next track is actually from Brandon McPhee, coincidentally, and it's from his album A Star Is Born, and here he is with that evergreen favourite, the Bluebell Polka. There we go, a great track from Brandon McPhee from his album A Star Is Born, and that was of course the Evergreen, the Bluebelt Polka. I hope you enjoyed that, Brenda. This time let's have an Eva 3-step, and it comes from the Burns Brothers from a great album called All Fingers and Thumbs. So here we go with an Eva 3-step from the Burns Brothers. Great playing from the Burns Brothers, John and George, and the guys in the band from an album, All Fingers and Thumbs. That was, of course, an Eva 3-step. Well, the next track comes from Marian Anderson and their Scottish dance band from an album, interestingly called Kangaroo Paw, and it's a medley for a dance called Perth Meets Perth. Well, a lovely set of tunes from Marian Anderson and the Scottish dance band from an album called The Kangaroo Paw, and that was for the dance Perth Meets Perth, and lovely set of tunes it was as well. Well, the next track comes from a great album, the Argyll Arms Ceilidh, and it's Andy Campbell and his Scottish dance band for this one, and the set's just entitled Anda's Jigs. A great set from Andy Campbell and his Scottish dance band from the album The Argyll Arms Ceilidh, and that was just a set entitled simply Anda's Jigs, and great jigs they were too. Well, time for another wee song. This time it comes from Graham Cairns, along with Ewan Galloway from the album Banjalodian. This is a lovely song called My Heart Leads Me Back.
As I look upon my life laid out before me, like the pages of a book I've often read, I'll go over all my past and all my present, making calls of indecision in my head. I've been up and down along the road of sadness, in solitude's deep shadows where I roam. It's my heart that leads me back again to Scotland, and the happiness among the folks at home. There's been time of great uncertainty in my life, and places where is worth bearing all the troubles I have known. I've been up and down along the road of sadness, in solitude's deep shadows where I roam. It's my heart that leads me back again to Scotland, and the happiness among the folks at home. In that green and pleasant land they know as England, I found some people there that I call friends, but there's nothing there that binds them all together. A land of counties stretched from end to end. I've been up and down along the road of sadness, in solitude's deep shadows where I roam. It's my heart that leads me back again to Scotland, and the happiness among the folks at home. I've been up and down along the road of sadness, in solitude's deep shadows where I've roamed. It's my heart that leads me back again to Scotland, and the happiness among the folks at home. I've travelled up and down across the miles of Scotland, and friends there are plenty to be found. Full of open heart, you'll always have a welcome. The better place in the whole of all mankind. The better place in the whole of all mankind. The better place in the whole of all mankind.
Graham Cairns and Ewan Galloway from the album Banjalodian there with a lovely song, My Heart Leads Me Back. Well, time for a dashing White Sergeant, and who better to give us that is Andrew Rankin and his band. I'll play this for Marge over in Missouri from an album called Take to the Dance Floor. Getting your sets now for a dashing White Sergeant. Well, a great track from Andrew Rankin and his Scottish dance band from the album Take to the Dance Floor. That was A Dashing White Sergeant. And we come to more modern times, and it's from the album Truly Scrumptious from Ian Cathcart and his band with the Kilberry Two-Step. A great two-step there from Ian Cathcart and his band, the Kilberry Two-Step, from an album Truly Scrumptious. Well, unfortunately that brings us to the end of the programme. We have one more track to go. I'll play it for Cyril Thompson. I think you'll like this one, Cyril. But thank you for your company for the last hour. Unfortunate about the Gremlins, but out with our control, and hopefully on the repeats it will be absolutely fine. I'll make sure before I upload it, but there was nothing I could do at this end. It was out with our control. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that hour as much as I enjoyed the music, and I hope you have a great week going forward. Until the next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll leave you in the very capable hands of Gordon Shand and his Scottish dance band with the Virginia Reel. All the best till the next time. Thanks very much, folks, and thanks for your kind words. All the best till next time. All the best.